Howard Berger, how do you believe Charles Bronson endures to this day as a fan favorite in action cinema?
Well, I think he's obviously one of one of a handful of actors that sort of, in his own way, was lucky, but also knew how to shape and sort of manufacture an identity for himself as a star. At the time that he was doing, it was very you could get away with trying to package yourself as this masculine, over masculine, this Superman sort of persona. But he started out, he'd been in films for so long before he was actually allowed to get a solo persona. I mean, he was still working under his name, Charles Baczynski, his real name, going back to the very early, I think the early 50s, if not even, may have been even earlier. But I think it was when Robert Aldrich, started casting him, put him in Apache with Burt Lancaster, where, he was able to sort of, his visual look was so striking in context to someone like Lancaster, who was a massive, massive star and a sort of a more sensitive, angled aspect. And Bronson was just perfect for not having a sensitive aspect. So he was a good balance to the bigger, very successful macho stars of that time. And then and I think he endures because people, through the decades, when you see this persona just, emerge, and then, sort of by the 70s when he's doing Death Wish with Michael Winner, it sets off a whole nother, era of identity and acceptance of that identity. He could fit very well into, every generation's sort of idea of, this iconic, larger than life, creature.
Yeah, he definitely has a salt of the earth quality, and he's a man's man. So what do we need to keep in mind when we think of Charles Bronson, the man?
The man, or the man's man?
Or just like, man? I threw out a lot
as a human being or as a star?
Just as a human being. Just as a human being. Like off the screen. What do we have to keep in mind when we respect or understand, or try to understand Charles Bronson?
Well, I mean, that's a interesting question. It really would. I think he sort of fits into a lot of different people's idea. He was a pretty private guy. I know that in real life, and I know from people like Richard Fleischer, who worked with him several times. He used to refer to him as Mr. Personality, which was sort of obviously facetious because he would, be on set and he would be very, just prepared to do his thing. He wasn't, someone who was known for being very social or, didn't mingle well on set. It wasn't his interest. He was there to do his job. So, but I do know that he he stole David McCallum's wife away from him, Jill Ireland. I think he was visiting this. I think he was working with McCallum. She was visiting the set of like The Great Escape, I think, and this was like 1962 or 3 when they were shooting. And he successfully managed to fall in love and steal David McCallum's wife away, but he had a very, until her death, he had a very, long, obviously loving relationship. After a certain point in his career where he felt secure with not falling out of the limelight, it was pretty obvious that he would just work his wife contractually as either a co-lead or a smaller part in any number of the films that he would be working on, literally for the next couple of decades, throughout the 70s. She was maybe in 95%, she would co-star or like I said, smaller part, just, I suppose, to keep her paid and around the set, around him. They were like lovebirds from what I know. So their world was very, very private. You really didn't hear much scandal about Charles Bronson. He was a pretty content guy, but he was a private guy. And I know other actors, also like Paul Koslow, a great character actor who appeared in a couple of films, that was kind of, edged by him. He was like, all right, sort of like a hands-off sort of attitude. But I think at some point they all must, crack a little bit if as long as he was sort of happy with his performance or his character, or happy with the director. I know also he was quoted as not liking. There was just one production that he just despised, and he was public about I don't know if he mentioned the director's name, but he was public about his. He just thought the director was the stupidest person on earth, and I think I know who that director is, but I can't. I don't want to confirm it because it's not from anybody's mouth. But it was. It still came out. It was one of his European films, and it still came out to be, I think, a really interesting movie. So he was, he wasn't a public persona. He really just wanted to, and he succeeded in manufacturing something that would endure without the need for him to be. To give up his privacy.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I was recently in Hollywood, and in a Hollywood Boulevard, the Jill Ireland, star, the Walk of Fame. That was the first one that got me really excited, and she's just she's so sexy. Oh my god! But big fan, especially of Violent City. But anyways, you did a commentary track on Cold Sweat, and also on Rider on the Rain. Were there any other tracks of Charles Bronson movies that you did that I'm missing?
I don't think so.
Okay.
So far, I think that's what we just and that's from a period of time that particularly fascinates me, because that was where he started getting really like name. No more of this sort of being part of an ensemble. He was really being cast as top liner.
Yeah. So what are some other key takeaways from these commentary tracks?
Well, what fascinates me is, he, especially from these films, this European post, Once Upon a Time in America, post Guns of West, Sebastian. Right? Yeah. I'm sorry. Once Upon a Time in the West.
Yeah.
I'm skipping ahead a couple of times.
You're right.
No. These were, I think, he took an opportunity that was offered to him as working a more sensitive side. He wanted to prove that he could do a lead role with some concessions to this macho sort of character he'd been, sort of polishing, and it wasn't a natural thing. He eventually, it wasn't an identity that I think was taken in the deep realm of acceptance that I think he was maybe hoping for. And he went right back to, sort of streamlining that and becoming more enigmatic again. Even though Death Wish, might have been the last, I think, really, successful attempt, at least in America, to be very sensitive and sympathetic. He's had other films like From Noon Till 3, which was almost experimental for him to try. But it wasn't relying on, being able to handle a very deep character. He eventually, I think, just knew to apply this sort of, elastic expectation of him. I think was interesting to him. Cold Sweat, especially, is it put him on sort of a, what's the word, like a precipice. The plot was very sort of formulaic, functional, but the director was the director of the early James Bond movies, Terrence Young, and he was just someone who would try and, he would live as well as he possibly could. And he would do work in these European co-productions seemingly indiscriminately. He would just pop up as a director. I think he would even, he was just a sort of a favorite for producers, and the Cold Sweat and sort of came after right on the heels of a tremendous surprise success, which was the other film we did, Riders on the Rain, and both commentaries. It was me and Nathaniel Thompson and Steve Mitchell, the director of King Cohen, the Larry Cohen documentary, and we all sort of had our own different sort of obsessions about this era of European co-production, especially with him. But it was Rider in the Rain was a surprise, tremendous hit, and the director was a real class actor, René Clément, who did Is Paris Burning, Forbidden Games, which is like a classic, post-World War II drama. I mean, it was really a sort of a prestige thriller, and it was based on where it's written by a very popular pseudonymous mystery author at the time, and I think it was such an odd, and it wasn't like a lead character. It was, but the female lead was the top line, and he played this sort of this mysterious character that came in, and he was the one who added the tension to the film. You didn't know whether he was a good guy or a bad guy, and I think it just clicked with European audiences, and then ultimately it really infected America. I remember it being, and I was very little at the time, must have been like 5 or 6. I remember that it was a movie that would pop up a lot as a double billed all over, my neighborhood in New York, and also eventually throughout the late 70s and mid 70s, late 70s into the 80s, it was everywhere on television. It would if a ball game ended, an hour too soon, it would be already in progress. They would have thrown the movie on that channel, and it was filler almost, because they must have just had this thing there, and it just kind of permeated your life in very weird ways at Rider on the Rain. But it's a very tricky, dreamlike film, and the popularity that just sent him into a great number of these European films. And he worked with, after he did Cold Sweat, he worked with that director a couple of times more, I think. Oh no, actually it was the Valachi Papers. I think that was the last time he worked with him, which was only about a year or so, in production after Cold Sweat. So no, he did Red Sun as well with Terrence Young. Yeah, so it's like 3 in a row. I think he went from Cold Sweat to Red Sun and then Valachi Papers. All different characters, and they didn't tax his limited this limited persona skills. He tried to keep the writing was good enough where you could understand the character arcs, but he wasn't necessarily visually needing to explore something like it's not like where Faye Dunaway would go with like Mommy Dearest or something, where you'd have to really like rip through the internal aspects of your character don't have to rip through you physically to you don't have to do kabuki theater to show these flares of personality. So he just managed to again work this very I don't even know if you would call it laconic, because he was pretty pumped and intense. Cold Sweat looks like he was working out in between shots to make sure the corded veins were prominent and pronounced, even though he wasn't playing a terribly violent character. He was sort of it's like one of these Unforgiven characters where there's a past, and he sort of thought he was getting into a place where he could just leave the past in the distance, and it sort of brought back to him unexpectedly. So he managed to do a lot with this very short little clutch of European co-productions. Someone Behind the Door is another one that I really like a lot, and I know that's actually the one that I believe had issues with. There's a great clip on YouTube. I think one of him on a talk show and another I think it's just shot on the set, and you're just watching him sort of at first calmly and then gradually getting more and more frustrated with the director, Nicholas Gessner. And I mean, it looked to me like they were working it out. It's what you do with actors and directors. They work out their vision. Sometimes it doesn't doesn't connect. But I don't think he really thought that Gessner was communicating to him, or at least he was working against the performance I think he saw opportunities for. And I think he ended up, calling the director an idiot, I guess, without really mentioning his name on I forgot which talk show it was. It was either The Tonight Show or Merv Griffin or something like that. It was one of those shows, but it's on YouTube. I mean, he was not happy with it. I think not knowing what he was looking for or what he was trying to do, I have to say, I think he's really good in the film, and that's an extreme example. If someone wants to see, kind of why he probably, didn't explore sensitive roles too much more after that, was, it's kind of shocking to see him as someone who is sort of a victim. And he plays an amnesiac and in this film, and there's a whole mystery, sort of mysteries on top of mysteries in this film, and he really was trying very deliberately to actually emote beyond the image that he's was used to doing so far. This kind of behind a face, like a mask, and holding the emotions back and holding his thinking back, so that the character would always be a surprise. And that's what Sergio Leone really, I think, relied on for Once Upon a Time in the West. Was, you just don't know who this character is, and he's a blank slate to the audience, and that's why you could tip farther and farther as the film progresses back into against this revelation of who this person is. So he was very willing to be sort of a chess piece for certain directors. And then you see something like Someone Behind the Door, and I really thought that was a pretty ambitious film, but and maybe the tension may not have satisfied Bronson, but it was, I think, created a very intriguing environment, because the director was a good director. I mean, he had an idea, but he was probably just a poor it was a poor fit for a personality like Bronson, who had he'd been used to using working with European directors, so it wasn't like a big surprise. But this particular coupling was not comfortable, to say the least. But it is in the movie, in terms of watching the film, I think it actually helped. But it's odd to see him so victimized, emotionally victimized, and he tried very, very hard to, I think, make a standout role. He was probably still thinking that maybe I didn't have to, keep playing, this mysterious block of ice. So, I think, that period of film is what really fascinates me the most about him. That's the one I'm most comfortable sitting down with, because to me, it's the place where he tried and made a decision that, maybe just a working retirement situation is best. He really, once he started working with Michael Winner in the 70s in America, that's when he pulled back a lot. So again, he was back to using this enigmatic persona. No, I mean, it's an interesting arc of films. A lot of these movies at the time were not well reviewed. Now, of course, it's a different era, and people have changed their look, especially their affection for him. This new millennium affection for him. It really sort of allows a much broader, critical rewatch of some of these films that were, had reputations of being just, you could smell the cynicism in the co-production. If there was 4 countries involved, usually I think back then critics would jump on that and sort of try and insinuate that they're just, a pure product. They weren't, they were just, actor mills, where they would just exploit a big star, pay him well, get him into these odd movies, and with unusual directors. And they got a reputation through people like Leonard Maltin, or even just the critics at the time. They weren't really accepted. Now people sit down, they look at it, and either it's, it goes into, his films will fall into 2 categories. One would be, is it badass? Because that's what he's sort of like,
right,
they want to pimp him off as this, badass monster machine. Or is it Bronson the auteur, and they want to look at everything as, which I fall into both camps depending upon the production, sometimes at the same time. This sort of, he's an artist, and the films are, regardless of, critical assessment, what are they really, they left a mark, obviously. People are still have an interest in them and are watching them. And it was funny to watch Cold Sweat and Rider on the Rain come out. And Rider on the Rain was always, very well received, even in TV guides, in the 70s. But not Cold Sweat. And I started seeing, more and more reviews of Cold Sweat, sort of, understanding a little bit more of what this film, meant in terms of, why it was created and what it was setting out to do. And people start taking it a little bit more seriously, and they can see, if anybody's work, a director or a screenwriter or an actor, you can sort of see why after, an arc, and he had about 40-year, segments of arcs tying together, and you can get an idea like of what he was trying, the type of roles he was trying to go for, and what he was trying to do within them. And I think people are noticing now, because he's so iconic, and the idea of using Charles Bronson is almost formulaic in itself, that you can look at it and go, oh, wow, look what he's doing here. Look what he's trying to do here. I've never seen him do this. Oh, I didn't realize he smiles so much in these movies. I thought he never smiled. You hear this a 1,000 times. And it's like, no, he smiles plenty. Other movies like House of Wax, he's not supposed to smile, he's, but the directors, know when to exploit that head. And I think what's interesting about the ones that we were discussing, the Cold Sweat and Rider on the Ring, is I think they were allowing him to take roles which were not common to his overall, body of work, and that is just, and he's just if you haven't seen these movies that much, you go, oh wow, this is a totally sort of new Bronson. But then you look at it in the scope of everything he's, his entire career, and you can see it was a chance. He took a chance to be flexible and maybe be a little more vulnerable as a character. And it's surprising because you could see after that there's a decision to, once you start working again with Michael Winner and others in the 70s, like Hard Times with Walter Hill, he's not taking the same chances. He's really just trying to find the best glove to fit in. And I'm not saying that lightly. I'm not saying he's not giving a great performance or he's relying on, the weakest instincts of his profession. I really think he still was tremendous. He was just figuring out a commercial fit. I mean, look what he was, competing with back then was like Clint Eastwood, who was very versatile and he wanted to direct. Bronson had no real ambitions to do anything but take the paycheck to have a great, weekend, or just a life with his wife somewhere exotic. He was, after so many years of, again, he was working in the 50s. He was in Roger Corman's Machine Gun Kelly in
Great
58.
Movie.
Yeah. He was very lucky. He had no matter what the budget or the level, I mean, he was given great opportunities to elevate himself into the public.
I just wanted to say my favorite Charles Bronson performance is when he does the anti-littering one in the 80s. The one where he says, you know what I hate more than anything in the world? A punk who litters. Don't you? I just want to break his nose. That was hilarious. But, I know it's basically impossible, but if you had to isolate Charles Bronson to one definitive performance, which film would you pick?
I honestly, I think Death Wish. I mean, I think everybody pretty much does that. I think nowadays, actually, it's not even Death Wish. Most people gravitate toward the most cartoonish one, which is the most contemptible one that Winter did was 3. Everybody likes that sort of more openly satiric, where he's almost making allowed to make fun of. He wasn't. I think Michael Winter was making fun of the whole trap of having to be burdened with, that this is the kind of movie that would get him box office. You know what I mean? Like he couldn't just make a film like he used to make, like The Games or something, more of a subtle satiric drama or a satiric piece or something. He had to do these Death Wish movies. But Death Wish itself is I think probably a great fusion of what his more experimental ambitions were very brief, and also what his ultimate persona would become. And it is a film that is truly at odds with itself. It has it has sort of like, it presents itself to be this sort of right-wing fantasy, and at the same time, the structure of it and the conclusion, they basically, because of the screenwriter Wendell Mays, has almost a liberal left-wing satiric collision with it, and it was so subtle that's not always what was noticed. And Winter himself is a very strange combination of, American criticism, political criticism, which would be more, I think at the time left-leaning, but at the same time, he was a very conservative guy in England. So these things sort of, I think really worked well, this little internal war, and he worked so well with Bronson, at least up to a point. I think Death Wish 2 was really a colliding point for that. That was not a happy circumstance. And Bronson was really just outright outraged at the idea of this escalating sort of grotesque exploitation of like rape and, but he did it anyway. But I don't think he knew that some scene, like there's a gang rape in that movie, that I don't think he knew how it was being filmed. And when he saw it, I know he was ready to kill Michael Winter, and that really put a hard kibosh on the relationship. I think J. Lee Thompson basically took over for working, being the main sort of like, again, working retirement director for Bronson. He didn't demand much. It was just vehicles for him to just go take a paycheck, do it. I mean, a lot of them, some came out really better than others. Like The Evil That Men Do, I think, is an excellent one. But Death Wish really showed that he was willing to. He kind of formed this everyman, which is really odd for him, where he didn't have to be pumped. It was tragedy and familial devotion that made him take a stand against what he saw as this uncontrollable violence, and how the youth of America, there's another thing, was transforming, I guess, post Vietnam era, and the effect of this kind of horrible violent climate was sort of clouding old-fashioned traditional expectations for your American dream, and he played it very sensitively. He literally transforms in that movie from a pacifist to what the film sort of indicts him at the very end. He turns into a monster. I mean, you see after his first kill, he actually goes and vomits, and he didn't, I think it was his first kill or first, real assault that he perpetrated on a mugger. He comes home and he pukes, and he also, Winter's very interesting. He shoots him in like shadow, total darkness, a silhouette and shadow, and he emerges from that this full-blown guy who's ready to be a vigilante and to go out. So physically, even Winter and Bronson sort of worked out this very theatrical, subtle theatrical transformation of the character visually in the film. So it's really interesting. And by the end of that movie, there's the classic last shot where he's relocated to a new city with its own set of crimes. And he's not there for 2 seconds off the plane where he's witnessing a woman being assaulted. And he holds his finger up and aims at it like, I'm going to start here. I don't need a gun. I'm the weapon. Like, this literally now is a handgun, which is actually something, I mean, it's a frightening creature. He's basically saying, I'm a monster now. I'm a monster equal to what I'm wanting to fight. And that's, fantastic. That's the idea behind Wendell Mays. I mean, he's always sort of done that. He did another, he's constantly challenging, left wing and right wing, political codings of the society that he's making the film about. Very tricky and very two-faced. This was wonderful. And I think both Winter and Bronson just went with the character, and they allowed Wendell Mays to deal with this, the thematics on his own. But it is something that Michael Winter ultimately the success of which I think he almost resented. He was making the most money for films that really were probably, the most offensive that he could possibly come up with. And he kind of contemptuously just exploited that again and again and again. And it lessened the impact of his career, which was coming on a really nice trajectory in the early 70s. Once he was a great satirist in England in the mid to late 60s. And then when he came over here, he was working with Bronson, mainly in the beginning. And he was making these action films like Chato's Land and thrillers like Scorpio with Elaine Delon and Burt Lancaster, and Lawman with Burt Lancaster. So Bronson and Lancaster were Winter's sort of go-to guys. And again, where do they both came from, Robert Aldrich's Apache together. So you could tell that Winter was sort of had his starry eyes with working with these titans, and he had great vehicles. But I think Death Wish really was an attempt to make it a human, an everyman, which was not a typical look for Bronson, but it was obviously at that time something that would be a catalyst for his greatest, arc of success.
Okay, well, Howard, thank you so much for your time. That was a very interesting conversation we just had on the greats, Charles Bronson.